Welcome, this is Hawkissimo, and in this video we're going to be talking about Chaac, God of Rain. As you can see, I've played Chaac quite a fair bit, good amount of worshippers on him. I love me my Chaac, and this video is going to run a little bit longer than usual because I have so many different ways that I can build Chaac, it's not even funny. I like to chalk it all out. These are the things I can chalk about. Well, come on. I'm talking to you, come on. All right, apologies for the singing, but there you go. Chaac. Chaac is a great lane bully, pretty straightforward to play, always effective because of the team stuff that he brings in his slows and his ultimate, good poke, good self-sustain. And with that in mind, these guys are... aimed at the casual modes, Clash my favorite, Siege, Joust, and Arena, not Conquest. Conquest builds are different meta, and there are lots of pros that talk about that, whereas almost nobody talks about the casual format and builds for these modes, and that's where I come in and why you're here watching this video. So let's talk about the ability builder. So, Chaac's primary poke is going to come from his Thunder Strike. It's where you throw your axe, and that's going to be the thing that you're going to need to just learn the timing of so that you're hitting it. I'm always shocked at how often I tell people to eat axe, and eat axe they do, because when I'm on the other side, it always feels like, well, it's coming pretty slow. I can dodge it, but yet people don't seem to be able to dodge my axe. I don't know. You can immediately follow that up with Torrent. So like if you throw it so that it lands just a little bit behind them, so they still take the Thunder Strike damage, and then you immediately hit your X or your 2 to dash through them, you'll get the extra damage that you see is listed here, right? So your axe is out, you'll first dash to the axe location, doing 50% base damage to enemies as you pass through them, and then executing your spin attack for the damage shown below. And the dash can go through walls, so it's also the sneaky way in which you can escape. You can chuck your axe over a wall, run another direction. If they follow you, you can then press your 2 to teleport through the wall. If they don't, well, then you've gotten away from that. So he can be hard to nail down as a result. Plus the rain dance throws down a area slow. Try to keep in mind that if you're rain dancing, you tend to want to do it after you've thrown out your Thunder Strike, because the rain comes around a radius of both you and wherever your axe is. So if it's in your hand, the radius is just around you. If, however, you've chucked it out, then it's also around that area. So you're just throwing down this huge swath of a slow effect, which is fantastic. Lets your team really help bully them down if you're not bullying them down. So, importante. His ultimate, even though it has fantastic power scaling, you can see that the silence doesn't increase as you level it, and the cooldown doesn't decrease, and there is no other nifty effect that gets better as you level it. And for that reason, you put one level in it at 5, and then I recommend pushing all the rest of the levels to 17, 18, 19, and 20, so that you can use all of your other abilities more frequently and get the effect of those. Stormcall is fantastic, however, for initiating team fights, because you start that sucker up, you'll see you like lift up into the air, and you silence, you knock up, and you damage all enemies around you. Plus you get that damage mitigation, and you're immune to crowd control effects. It's not the damage that is the big problem. It's the fact that all of that other nonsense has occurred, letting the rest of your team really abuse them. So I like to not focus just the poke, but also space in the torrent. Likewise, the rain and the torrent, you see a little bit of spacing there because you will throw them in sequence. If, for instance, at level 7, you said, hey, Hawk, would it be okay if I only had 3 levels here and then I put the second level here? Absolutely, because, you know, I did recommend you use your 1 followed by your 2, so you will get the improved scaling because you have a level in both of those. So, you know, you get that 1-2 right away. So that's certainly worth it if, however, you want to be a little bit more safe and have more distance poke. Nothing wrong with that. And you can see there is a cooldown difference, and the cooldown for that reason prioritizes your 1, your Thunderstrike, that axe throw. Tell them to eat axe. Tell them Hawk told you to. All right, so with that said, let's get into ability builds. And I'm not going to give you 2. I'm probably going to end up 3, 4, maybe even 5 different builds. How's that for overwhelming? But it shows you how much I like playing Chaac. All right, so let's look at the initial build. And this is really a learner build. Again, it should really let you learn this god very effectively, let you both tank and deal damage and have even more annoying effects. So with that in mind, let's get into it. Starter items. Chaac has a lot of versatility here in terms of starter items. So let's talk about that a bit. Bluestone Pendant lets you get out the most damage initially. So because you're going to chuck your 1-2, you're immediately going to be able to cycle off that extra 60 damage because you can get the 2 stacks there. Plus, you've gotten the 15 power, you've gotten the extra mana, and you've gotten the MP5, which is the extra mana per 5 seconds. So 5 more mana every 5 seconds, stacking on top of your base and every other effect that gives you the same. So that's a fine starting item. If you want to be a little bit more cautious, going into Death's Toll, because it has the 100 health, perfectly fine. You still have 10 power, and you still get Sustain, because every time you swing your axe on a melee attack, you're going to get 8 health and 3 mana when you hit an enemy. So that's also very viable. You want to tank it out and go health with physical protection and also have that passive to reduce incoming damage. By all means, this is a very strong move with him, particularly if you're against a lane opponent or lane opponents that have dot damage over time. So think Bluestone Pendant, think Anubis's abilities, think Hades' ultimate, think Zhang abilities. You know, those are some of the dot folks that are out there. So that's very good. I am not a proponent of going into Lonzo's Mask. I think that's more of a conquest meta because money is a little tighter there, and so this gives you the ability to start to build some health stacks early and then get some of that money back because you'll get the 400 once you reach the 75 stacks, plus you'll get the sell price. But you're losing out on all the other bennies or benefits that these other items are giving you. So I would not go that way. I would stick to one of the 3 that I subscribed. Or I would look at War Flag if you want to be in that idea that you're physical god playing a little support role. I think that that's perfectly fine. You know, you're helping with giving more move speed and attack speed to yourself and your allies. So nothing wrong with that. And Watcher's Gift is really just undervalued. You know, it's 100 health, it's physical protection, it's magical protection, it's MP5, and it's got a passive that will give you more gold and health and mana when other people are killing minions, which is great. Like if you're in a lane with Ra, you know, his 1 is just going to irradiate a minion wave. If you're in there with the super pokey hunter, you know, that kind of stuff, you know, why not get some of that extra bennies from their clear? So I think any one of those viable, and I use them all. However, I do not vary on my boots. You know, the viable options, one could make an argument for each and every one of them. So let's talk about them. You know, he's a warrior. This one's called Warrior Tabai. So that already tells you where you should be leaning. He's not an auto attack warrior, even though his passive does have some synergy with auto attacks. Every 5th attack, he's building up little dots that once you have 5 of them, your next ability is free. But, you know, that's not how he's primarily doing damage. He's going to be casting his abilities to do that, in my humble opinion. But if you wanted to go Ninja Tabby because then you were thinking, hey, Hawk, I want to look at other attack speed as well, and I'm willing to lose 20 damage per hit at those super early levels just to get that little bit of attack speed, oh, all right. It's not the worst thing. Hey, Hawk, I want to be super tanky, so I want to go into the extra health. I'm willing to lose 30 damage per hit on my basic attack. Hey, you did say I get some good attack damage out of my abilities, and I want that crowd control reduction because I see a lot of annoying effects on the other team. Yeah, team comp wise as a counter pick, sure, and you get that extra stacks that start to go up of 3 physical protection every time you get hit, stacking up 6 times, that's 18 points of additional defense. Okay. This is probably the weakest of all the choices, but if you want to make some crazy money farming run, you're hitting for 15 power instead of 20 or 40, depending on which of the other boots we were talking about. But you do get extra move speed when you're out of combat. You get health out of combat, and you get extra money when you're hitting opponents. Yeah, eventually it'll pay for itself. So, in the end, you have the thought process behind them all. This A build already has some attack speed right here, so that's why I'm not valuing it as high. So then I have you going, so let's resequence them in the proper order here. So then you're going to go in and build, well, your consumables, right? So again, in Clash and those other modes that I mentioned, you go back to Fountain a lot more, so building chalices makes a lot more sense. In Conquest, you try and back less frequently, so buying individual potions has some zuzu to it. Final note about wards. Wards rule, by all means. I personally carry wards in this spot, but if you're just learning the god and you want the extra safety blanket of mana as opposed to the safety blanket of vision, both valuable, I wouldn't cry if you went a mana potion. Breastplate of Valor. So physical protection, 20% cooldown, 300 more mana to play with, and mana back as MP5, very powerful. Here's a aura-based item that will help you and your allies. It's 50 magical protection. It's 10% cooldown. It's 10 MP5 if I'm not mistaken. And it's a 25% attack speed buff to you and any of your allies that's around you. If you don't understand how auras work, you should go ahead and look in the Getting Started section and go watch my aura video. Very important to understand how all auras work. So you could go into that next. So now you have 30% cooldown. You're getting lots of mana back. You have protection for both magical and physical. You're ready to rock. So you have lots of choices to go into next. I like putting in some pen here because you want to counter some of the intrinsic armor that everybody has as a consequence of going up. I also happen to think Brawler's Beat Stick is a wonderful item for Chaac because I find it's very easy to hit his damage abilities. So you're going to debuff their healing. So it's 40 power, it's 15 pen, and whenever you hit an opponent with your abilities, you debuff their healing by 40% for 8 seconds. So that's this item. Very strong. However, if you wanted to flip the sequence of these two, nothing wrong with that. This is Shifter Shield. Fantastic item, buffed in patch 4.9. So if you're not familiar with its buff state, it's right here. You can see that it's 35 power, 15 defense, both magic and physical, and its base stasis. However, it changes depending on your health. When you're over 50% health, you get 35 more power for a total of 70. 70 power, that's phenomenal. And then when you're under 50 health, because you've been slugging it out toe to toe or you got bursted, suddenly instead of having 15 defense, you get 35 additional for a total of 50. So good mojo there. So that would be the next item that I recommend. Whoops, let's not get crazy and put the wrong item there and confuse the heck out of everybody, Hawk. So I think both of those are viable. Let's talk relics before we go into sub builds. So, the safest two are always these two items. Talking about it in every God Guide here. It's always going to be talked about. I've talked about how Thorns is great when you're hulking it out in the midst of a team fight and or some Loki idiot is trying to burst you down. You cast Thorns and pretty much ends that nonsense. Med is always nice for the late game. I know you already have a self-heal here, but this gets you your mana back. I know I built lots of mana regen, but keep in mind, it's not only for you, it's for your team, which means that you can help strip down those objectives being towers, phoenixes, the Titan, and any other monster that happens to be in the mode you're in, whether it's Apotheosis or however the heck you say it, Gold Fury, Fire Giant, whatever. Still very strong. The more time your hunters and mages with Titan's Bane and Void Shard get to slug it out, the faster they get stripped. So you carrying that as a support kind of relic can really turn the tide in your favor and remind everybody that this Smite is an objective game. It's not a kill game. Kills are simply there as a consequence of trying to push your objectives. Never forget that in a MOBA. When you do, that's how you end up having games flipped around on you, because people get distracted chasing kills and assists and forget to push their lane. And in a game like Guardians of Middle-earth, where I was top 3 in the world on PlayStation and came in, 2.5 years late, 3 years late on Xbox and was top 50. They had a whole class that was dedicated to pushing down objectives. So the tactician class there was getting that job done. All right, so enough about that soapbox. When you're ready to sell your last item, you can come down into this line. Lots of useful things. This helps you push those objectives, which is why it's always here. You can always tank up. The cloak is, very versatile. 40 physical, 40 magical, 10% cooldown, bringing you to the maximum cooldown that you can have, which is 40. It's a hard cap. You can see the numbers and brackets on the right-hand column, and that they're divided into 3 sections: offense, defense, and utility. In the utility section, the second thing is cooldown, and you see the 40 plus the number of brackets. That's the hard cap. So never build beyond the hard cap if you can help it. For any of them, but we're talking cooldown, so that's why I mention it here. If you want to do damage just by having people stand around you, this is certainly very viable. This item gives slows on your basic attacks and has 350 health. It's not a lot of power, but again, you don't need a lot of power with Chaac. It goes a long way. That extra health will let you tank out even more. Health and armor work hand in hand to create effective health. Think of your health as a battery that's getting drained, and armor as armor. So armor is going to mitigate a percentage of damage coming in, and there's some complex formulas around that, and they're decreasing value as you get higher and higher, but just trust me that the two work in conjunction. And I guess if you want a lot more detail about that, go check out Emilzy. He's the support player for Obey. They won the spring split, and he talks about that in some of his videos. So that's where I got some of the math behind it, which I'm not going to bother to go into. This is too casual format. All right, so now let's talk about some alternative builds, because Sir Chocolat has a lot to bring to the table. All right, some alternate builds. So here's one that's a different iteration of a tanky build. If you went down this pathway, let's say like this, you're still at a 40% cooldown, 30% here because you got 20 on breastplate. Pestilence is hands down the strongest overall magical defense item in the game. It's 80 magical defense with 200 health, and it has that useful passive that reduces enemies' healing when they're around you. It's not as powerful a debuff as Brawler's Beat Stick, but you don't need to hit them. You just need to be around them. And Chaac's a up-in-your-face kind of god, so that works. Sona Gaia is great. It's 400 health. It's MP5, it's HP5, and has those two very useful passives. In fact, they're so useful, let's go over and take a look at them in case you're not familiar with this item. It's in the same tree as here. Sona Gaia. So you have that first passive that stops knockups, knockbacks, pulls, and grabs. You'll have like a little golden swirly through your body that will show you when you're immune. And when it disappears, it means that this is procced. You also have the effect that your beads purification relic would, being CC immune for 1 second, and it refreshes every 9 seconds. So that lets you really tank out, especially when you look at that second passive. So aside from the base health and the additional HP 5 that it's giving you, it also says, hey, let me look at 2% of Chaac's total maximum health and regen that every 5 seconds. So those are two stacking effects. So that's a great item. This was in the same tree. So let's take a look at that. And you're going to see Chaac gets a lot of utilization out of everything in this tree. But I was looking at Shield of Regrowth, 300 health, MP5, HP5, 10% cooldown. After healing yourself from an ability, which you have in your Rain Dance, you're going to get 40% movement speed for 4 seconds. Lets you chase people down or run, as the case may be. So a lot of flexibility, a lot of synergy. You know, it's bringing a lot to his toolkit in the same way that you would find with an Amaterasu. Gets a lot of bang for her buck because of her one. Very viable way to go ahead and play Chaac. Again, anything up here in this flex. But wait, there's more. Let's talk about another iteration of Chaac that just flat out works. Again, going into the starting item and, you know, whichever boots you want to. Let's look at Classic Support. Classic Support build works awesome for Chaac. I use this in Conquest all the time. It works great. And that's because of the auras. You got to know how auras work. Watch that video. Maybe I'll even put a link here. I haven't figured out how to do that yet, but trust me, I have a video that covers it. So by stacking these aura items up, the numbers to the right do not properly reflect the defenses that you're getting. And my aura video talks about that. But trust me that you have 20 more here. You have an additional 20 that came here. You have an additional 20 that came here. You have additional HP 5 and MP 5 that haven't been reflected, and you're sharing them with your team. All 3 of these, fantastic stuff. You want to go with a little bit of power but still have defense? Sure, why the hell not? You want to stay pure support and bring in some cloaks or more auras? Sure, why not? Lots of different ways you can go with him. Hell, let's even throw in one more because we're feeling sassy. Let's talk about a more aggressive Chaac build. Why the hell not, right? So let's then talk about going into some attack speed. So you could combine this with Ninja Tabi or not, because again, the purple armor there, the Shogun's Kusari, gave you 25% attack speed, so we already went into it. You could go into it with some flat pen if you wanted to. I don't think that's the most effective. I would suggest Quinn's size. I think that this brings great utilization. You got 40 power, you got 15% attack speed, plus you're going to do a percentage of the enemy's health as additional damage to them. And it's only for gods, but trust me, great efficiency here. So let's see if... Let's put it away that we want to be completely bonsai aggressive. Why the heck not? So we could go something like this. Let's go with there. So if we put this, we still have a little bit of tank to us. but then we put in even more attack speed. But wait, there's more. Then let's think about... I would go Titan's Bane next, and then end it off with even more attack speed. Why the hell not? So at that point, you can sell your starter item, and then come on down and, whoops, pick up this. That would be fine. So again, the attack speed is actually 25% higher than it's reflected because of the cruddy item builder that they gave doesn't properly reflect the aura effect of Shogun's Kusari. Just trust me, it's there when you're in game. You know, that could be a lot of fun. You're still tanky, but you're going to be able to get lots of free ability casts because of Chaac's passive. Again, I didn't focus on that, trusting for you guys to be able to come here and simply read this. But like I said, you're going to see to the left of your life bar this Kukulkan looking thing that's there. And the little dots will fill up as you successfully hit with a basic attack. And once it's fully filled, the next ability that you cast will deduct no mana from you. So a great way to cast the more expensive cast cost things in your toolkit. But, you know, don't be greedy. Just cast the one that you want to. And with that crazy attack speed build, you'd be able to do that. So there, lots of different Chaac builds for you to fool around with. He is a lane bully. Once you get used to figuring out how long you can really sustain in front of somebody's face because of his natural tankiness, because of the armor, because of the health, and because of his rain dance, you're going to have a lot of fun not retreating, gaining level because you're constantly in lane, and bullying people down, and the annoying effects of his slow and the ultimate. Remember to skate through them with your torrent. You know, don't forget, it's not just damage. You're also doing that protections that you're getting there. So you're gaining protections for everybody that you hit when you do that swirl, and it is that area of effect, and it's all enemies, so that's minions as well. So picking up free protections is fantastic, and that's why I do have you leveling that. So there's a lot of versatility in how Chaac plays. Okay, with that said, you should have certainly found some useful information here, so do me a favor and click that like. Click the bell to be notified when I post new videos. I do plan on being pretty aggressive in posting lots of video content for Clash and the other casual modes. The meta is different, as I've mentioned. Go ahead and give me a subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, you want to tell me, hey, Hawk, I like this, the way that Chaac plays with this build, or what do you think about this item? Hawk, you know, I'll certainly do my best to answer. I tend to check here every day or two, so it shouldn't be too long on a delay. I put links up to my Twitter, and I also post on Reddit, so lots of different ways to check in with me. Thank you very much, and thank you for watching this video. I hope to see more of you and have some interactions, because that's what makes it fun for me as well. This is Hawkissimo signing out of Chaac, the Rain God.